Hello, darlings. I am trying something different. I think I need to clean that lens. I apologize. There we go. Still not that great. The lighting is not good, but that will have to suffice for now. I'm in a different section of the house than I normally am. Let's see. I have to do my little things here, you know. I have to see that I'm live. Let's see. Home. I don't know why it's always so difficult for me to remember how to do this. There we go. And we share that one. Copy the link. We'll share that over. Hi, Lauren. Good to see you. I'm going to come right over here to the Gentleman Psychic page. And we're going to create a post. Hi, Christy. Good to see you. Join me live for more of the sorrows of Satan. There is, I just found out this weekend, I was in I was in Boston this weekend for the Mass Paracon. And there is something where you can, how many more chapters? Oh, I don't know. I hope soon. And I love the book. I'm enjoying the book. I really am. I really would like it to be done. We're on page 332, and we have to go to 4 something, I think. 471. So we're on 333, and we're going to 471. So whatever that translates to, I don't know. I don't know why Christy's telling me to take a nap, but okay. Anyway, I learned that there is this thing that you can stream on all of your social media. So all I have to do is click on one, and it goes onto YouTube, and it goes on. But now, as it is for now, I have to go through and do it the old-fashioned way until I can figure that other thing out. Let's see. There we go. Change that to the news feed. Post it. Okay. Well, anyway, yes, so I do not know how much more I have. I was in, hi, Mary Jane. Good to see you. I have several more chapters to read, but I have other books that I'm going to be reading for Halloween season. Coming up in October, it's going to be a little hectic, a little chaotic. I'm going to Salem, Massachusetts. I am going, oh goodness, I think there's someplace else I'm supposed to go. I'm flying to Hollywood too. That is right. I will be in Los Angeles on the Halloween season. Hi, Corey. Good to see you. So that is what I will be doing. Anyway, so it's going to be a little chaotic in October to read. So what I am going to do is in October, I've got a whole selection of Halloween-themed stories to read. The Halloween Tree is one of them. A Visit to the Haunted House, which I've read before. I've got Alfred Hitchcock's stories of haunted houses. So that'll be fun. Happy early birthday to your daughter. Hello, Nate. Good to see you. We've got so many lovely friends here already. Okay, well, with that, my lovelies, let us begin. Details of your touring, yes. Well, Lauren, I definitely want to see you when I'm back in Los Angeles. In Salem, I'm going with a friend. I'm supposed to be meeting with the Deal Marcus Company from Los Angeles in Salem. We had discussed maybe doing some readings there in October. I'm going to be in Los Angeles area because my friends have missed me, and they wanted me to come back and say hello. So we've got that. Anyway, October is always it's sort of my Christmas. It's always the busy time of year. Um, anyway, Miluki, hi, good evening. Hello, hello. All right, let us now continue, my darlings. Chapter 29. A tranquil time now ensued, a time which, though I knew it not, was just that singular pause so frequently observed in nature before a storm, and in human life before the crushing calamity. I put aside all troublesome and harassing thoughts, and became oblivious to everything save my own personal satisfaction in the renewal of the comradeship between myself and Lucio. We walked together, rode together, and passed most of our days in each other's company. Nevertheless, though I gave my friend much of my closest confidence, I never spoke to him of the moral obliquities and perversions I had discovered in Sybil's character. Not out of any consideration for Sybil, but simply because I knew by instinct what his reply would be. He would have no sympathy with my feelings. His keen sense of sarcasm would overrule his friendship, and he would retort upon me with that question: what business had I, being imperfect myself, to expect perfection in my wife? Like many others of my sex, I had the notion that I, as a man, could do all I pleased, when I pleased, and how I pleased. I could sink to a level lower than that of the beasts if I chose, but all the same, I had the right to demand from my wife the most flawless purity, to mate with my defilement. I was aware how Lucio would treat this form of arrogant egotism, and with what mocking laughter he would receive any expression of ideas from me on the subject of morality in women. So I was careful to let no hint of my actual position escape me, and I comported myself on all occasions to Sybil with special tenderness and consideration, though she, I thought, appeared rather to resent my playing the part of lover-husband too openly. She was herself, in Lucio's presence, strangely erratic of humor, by turns brilliant and mournful, sometimes merry and anon depressed. Yet never had she displayed a more captivating grace and charm of manner. How foolish, how blind I was all the while, how dead to any perception of the formation and the sequence of events. Absorbed in gross material pleasures, I ignored all the hidden forces that make the history of an individual life no less than of a whole nation, and looked upon each day that dawned almost as if it had been my own creation and possession to waste as I thought fit, never considering that days are but so many white leaflets from God's chronicle of human life, whereon we place our mark, good or bad, for just and the exact summoning of our thoughts and deeds hereafter. Had any one dared to say this truth to me, I should have bade him to go and preach nonsense to children. But now, when I recall those white leaves of days that were unrolled before me fresh and blank, with every sunrise, and with which I did nothing save scrawl my own ego in foul smudge across each one, I tremble, and inwardly pray that I may never be forced to send back my self-written record, yet of what use it is to pray against eternal law. It is eternal law that we shall ourselves count up our own misdeeds at the final reckoning. Hence, it is no wonder that many are found who prefer not to believe in future after death. Rightly, do such esteem it better to die utterly than to be forced to live again and look back upon the wileful evil that they have done. October ripened slowly and almost imperceptibly towards its end, and the trees put on their gorgeous autumnal tints of burning crimson and gold. The weather remained fine and warm, and what the French Canadians poetically term the summer of all saints gave us bright days and cloudless moonlit evenings. The air was so mild that we were always able to take our coffee after dinner on the terrace overlooking the lawn in front of the drawing room. And it was one of these balmy nights that I was interested in spectre of strange scene between Lucio and Mavis Clare, a scene I should have thought impossible of occurrence had I not myself witnessed it. Mavis had dined at Willowsmere. She very rarely so honoured us, and there were a few other guests besides. We had lingered over the coffee longer than usual, for Mavis had given an extra charm to the conversation by her eloquent vivacity and bright humour, and all present were anxious to hear, see, and know as much the brilliant novelist as possible. But when a full golden moon rose in mellow splendour over the treetops, my wife suggested a stroll in the grounds, and everyone agreeing to the proposal with delight, we started, more or less together, some in couples, some in groups of 3 or 4. After a little desultory rambling, however, the party got separated in the rose gardens and adjacent shrubberies, and I found myself alone. I turned back to the house to get my cigar case, which I had left on the table in the library, and passing out again in another direction, I strolled slowly across the grass, smoking as I went. Towards the river, the silver gleam of which could clearly be discovered through the fast thinning foliage overhanging its banks. It had almost reached the path that followed the course of the winding water when I was brought to a standstill by the sound of voices. One, a man's low and persuasive, the other a woman's tender, grave, and somewhat tremulous. Neither voice could be mistaken. I recognized Lucio's rich, penetrating tones and the sweet, vibrant, it's not vibrant, it's vibrant, accents of Mavis Clare. Out of sheer surprise, I paused. Had Lucio fallen in love? I wondered, half smiling. Was I about to discover the supposed woman-hater, had been tamed and caught at last by Mavis, too? Little Mavis, who is not beautiful according to accepted standards, but who had something more than beauty to enravish a proud and unbelieving soul. Here, as my thoughts ran on, I was conscious of a foolish sense of jealousy. Why should he choose Mavis, I thought? Out of all the women in the world, could he not leave her in peace with her dreams, her books, and her flowers, safe under the pure, wise, impassive gaze of the Pallas Athene, whose cool brows were never fevered by touch of passion? Something more than curiosity now impelled me to listen, and I cautiously advanced a step or two towards the shadow of a broad elm where I could see without being seen. Yes, there was Ximenes standing erect, with folded arms, his dark, sad, inscrutable eyes fixed on Mavis, who stood opposite him a few paces off, looking at him in her turn with an expression of mingled fascination and fear. I have asked you, Mavis Clare, said Lucio slowly, to let me serve you. You have a genius, a rare quality in a woman, and I would advance your fortunes. I should not be what I am if I did not try to persuade you to let me help you on your career. You are not rich. I could show you how to become so. You have a great fame, that I grant, but you have many enemies and slanderers who are forever trying to pull you down from the throne you have won. I could bring these to your feet and make them your slaves. With your intellectual power, your personal grace, and gifts of temperament, I could, if you would let me, guide you, give you such far-reaching influence as no woman has possessed in this century. I am no boaster. I can do what I say and more, and I ask nothing from you in return except that you should follow my advice implicitly. My advice, let me tell you, is not difficult to follow. Most people find it easy. His expression of face, I thought, was very singular as he spoke. It was so haggard, dreary, and woebegone that one might have imagined he was making some proposal that was particularly repugnant to him, instead of offering to perform the benevolent action of helping a hard-working literary woman to achieve greater wealth and distinction. I waited expectantly for Mavis to reply. "You are very good, Prince Ximenes," she said, after a little pause. "To take any thought for me at all, I cannot imagine why you should do so, for I am really nothing to you. I have, of course, heard from Mr. Tempest of your great wealth and influence, and I have no doubt you mean kindly. But I have never owed anything to anyone. No one has ever helped me. I have helped myself, and still prefer to do so. And really, I have nothing to wish for except, when the time comes, a happy death. It is true I am not rich, but then I do not want to be rich. I would not be the possessor of wealth for the world. To be surrounded by sycophants and flatterers, never to be able to distinguish false friends from true, to be loved for what you have and not for what you are. Oh no, it would be misery to me, and I have never craved for power, except perhaps the power to win love. And that I have. Many people love my books, and through my books love me. I feel their love, though I may never see or know them personally. But I am so conscious of their sympathy that I love them in return without the necessity of personal acquaintance. They have hearts which respond to my heart. That is all the power I care about." "You forget your numerous enemies," said Lucio, still morosely regarding her. "No, I do not forget them," she returned, "but I forgive them. They can do me no harm as long as I do not lower myself. No one else can lower me. If my own conscience is clear, no reproaches can wound. My life is open to all. People can see how I live and what I do. I try to do well, but if there are those who think I do ill, I am sorry. And if my faults can be amended, I shall be glad to amend them. One must have enemies in this world. That is, if one makes any sort of position. People without enemies are generally non-entities. All who succeed in winning some little place of independence must expect the grudging enmity of hundreds who cannot find even the smallest foothold, and are therefore failures in the battles of life. I pity these sincerely, and when they say or write cruel things of me, I know it is only spleen and disappointment that moves both their tongues and pens, and I freely pardon them. They cannot hurt or hinder me. In fact, no one can hurt or hinder me but myself." I heard the trees rustle slightly. A branch cracked, and peering through the leaves, I saw that Lucio had advanced a step closer to where Mavis stood. A faint smile was on his face, softening it wonderfully and giving an almost supernatural light to his beautiful dark features. "Fair philosopher, you are almost feminine Marcus Aurelius in your estimate of men and things," he said. "But you are still a woman, and there is one thing lacking to your life of sublime and calm contentment, a thing at whose touch philosophy fails and wisdom withers at its root. Love, Mavis Clare, lover's love, devoted love, blindly passionate. This has not been yours as yet to win. No heart beats against your own. No tender arms caress you. You are alone. Men, for the most part, are afraid of you. Being brute fools themselves, they like their women to be brute fools also. And they grudge you your keen intellect, your serene independence. Yet, which is best, the adoration of a brute fool, or the loneliness pertaining to a spirit aloft in some snowy mountain peak with no companions but the stars? Think of it. The years will pass, and you must needs grow old. And with the years will come that solitary neglect which makes age bitter. Now you will doubtless wonder at my words, yet believe me when I speak the truth, when I say that I can give you love. Not my love, for I love none. But I can bring to your feet the proudest men in any country of the world as suitors for your hand. You shall have your choice of them, and your own time for choosing. And whomsoever you love him you shall wed. Why, what is wrong with you that you think you shrink from this? for she had retreated and was gazing at him in a kind of horror. "You terrify me," she faltered, and as the moonlight fell upon her, I could see that she was very pale. "Such promises are incredible, impossible. You speak as if you were more than human. I do not understand you, Prince Jimenez. You are different to anyone I have ever met, and something in me stronger than myself warns me against you. What are you? Why do you talk to me so strangely? Pardon me if I seem ungrateful. Oh, let us go in. It is getting quite late, and I'm sure I am cold." She trembled violently and caught at the branch of the tree to steady herself. Jimenez stood immovably still, regarding her with a fixed and almost mournful gaze. "You say my life is lonely," she went on reluctantly, and with a note of pathos in her sweet voice. "And you suggest love and marriage as the only joys that can make a woman happy. You might be right. I do not presume to assert that you are wrong. I have many married women friends, but I would not change my lot with any one of them. I have dreamed of love, but because I have not realized my dream, I am not the less content. If it is God's will that I should be alone all of my days, I shall not murmur, for my solitude is not actual loneliness. Work is a good comrade. Then I have books and flowers and birds. I am never really lonely. And that I shall fully realize my dream of love one day. I am sure, if not here, then hereafter. I can wait." As she spoke, she looked up to the placid heavens, where one or two of the stars twinkled through the arching boughs. Her face expressed angelic confidence and perfect peace, and Jimenez, advancing a step or two, fully confronted her with a strange light of exultation in his eyes. "True, you can wait, Mavis Clare," he said in a deep, clear tones from which all sadness had fled. "You can afford to wait. Tell me, think for a moment, can you remember me? Is there a time on which you can look back and looking see my face, not here but elsewhere? Think. Did you ever see me long ago in a far sphere of beauty and light when you were an angel, Mavis? And I was not what I am now. How you tremble. You need not fear me. I would not harm you for 1,000 worlds. I talk wildly at times, I know. I think of things that are past, long, long, long past, and I am filled with regrets that burn my soul with fiercer heat than fire. And so neither world's wealth, world's power, nor world's love will tempt you, Mavis, and you, a woman. You are a living miracle, then. As miraculous as the drop of undefiled dew, which reflects its tiny circumference all the colors of the sky, and sinks into the earth sweetly, carrying moisture and refreshment where it falls. I can do nothing for you. You will not have my aid. You reject my service. Then I may not help you. You must help me." And dropping before her, he reverently took her hand and kissed it. "I ask a very little thing of you. Pray for me. I know you are accustomed to pray, so it will be no trouble to you. You believe God hears you, and when I look at you, I believe it too. Only a pure woman can make faith possible to man. Pray for me then, as one who has fallen from his higher and better self, who strives, but who may not attain, who labors under heavy punishment, who would fain reach heaven, but who by cursed will of man, and by man alone, is kept in hell. Pray for me, Mavis Clare. Promise it, and so shall you lift me a step nearer the glory I have lost." I listened, petrified with amusement. Could this be Lucio, the mocking, careless, cynical scoffer I knew as I thought so well? Was it really he who knelt like this repentant sinner, abasing his proud head before a woman? I saw Mavis release her hand from his, the while she stood looking down upon him in alarm and bewilderment. Presently she spoke in sweet yet tremulous accents. "Since you desire it so earnestly, I promise," she said. "I will pray that the strange and bitter sorrow which seems to consume you may be removed from your life." "Sorrow," he echoed, echoed, interrupting her with a springing to his feet with an impassioned gesture. Woman, genius, angel, whatever you are, do not speak of one sorrow for me. I have 1,000,000 sorrows, I 1,000,000,000, that are as little flames about my heart, and as deeply seated as the centuries of the universe. The foul and filthy crimes of men, the base deceits and the cruelties of women, the ruthless, murderous ingratitude of children, the scorn of good, the martyrdom of intellect, the selfishness, the avarice, the sensuality of human life, the hideous blasphemy and sin of the creature of the Creator. These are my endless sorrows. These keep me wretched in chains when I would fain to be free. These create hell around me and endless torture. These bind and crush me and pervert my being till I become what I dare not name to myself or to others. And yet, as the eternal God is my witness, I do not think I am as bad as the worst man living. I may tempt, but I do not pursue. I take the lead in many lives, yet I make the way I go so plain that those who follow me do so by their own choice and free will more than by my persuasion. He paused, then continued in a soft tone. You look afraid of me, but be assured you never had less cause for terror. You have truth and purity. I honor both. You will have none of my advice or assistance in making of your life's history. Tonight, therefore, we part, to meet no more on earth. Never again, Mavis Clare. No, not through all your quiet days of sweet and contented existence will I cross your path before heaven, I swear it. But why? Asked Mavis, gently approaching him, now as she spoke with soft grace of movement, and laying her hand on his arm. Why do you speak with such a passion of self-reproach? What dark cloud is on your mind? Surely you have a noble nature, and I feel that I have wronged you in my thoughts. You must forgive me. I have mistrusted you. You do well to mistrust me, he answered. And with these words he caught both her hands and held them in his own, looking at her full in the face with eyes that flashed like jewels. Your instinct teaches you rightly. Would there were many more like you to doubt me and repel me. One word. If, when I am gone, you ever think of me, think that I am more to be pitied than the veriest paralyzed and the starving wretch that ever crawled the earth, for he, perchance, has hope, and I have none. And when you do pray for me, for I hold you to your promise, pray for one who dares not pray for himself. You know the words, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Tonight you have been led into temptation, though you knew it not, but you have delivered yourself from evil, as only a true soul can. And now, farewell. In life I shall see you no more. In death, well, I have attended many deathbeds in my response to the invitations of the moribund, but I shall not be present at yours. Perhaps when your parting spirit is on the verge between darkness and light, you may know who I was and who I am, and you may thank God with your last breath that we parted tonight, as we do now forever. He loosened his grasp to her. She fell back from him, pale and terrified, for there was something now in the dark beauty of his face that was unnatural and appalling. A somber shadow clouded his brows. His eyes had gleams in them, as of fire, and a smile was on his lips, half tender, half cruel. His strange expression moved even me to the sense of fear, and I shivered with sudden cold. Though the air was warm and balmy, slowly retreating, Mavis moved away, looking round at him now and then as she went, in wistful wonder and alarm, till, in a minute or two, her slight figure, in its shimmering silken white robe, had vanished among the trees. I lingered, hesitating and uncertain what to do, then finally determining to get back to the house if possible without being noticed. I made one step when Lucio's voice, scarcely raised, addressed me. Well, eavesdropper, why did you not come out of the shadow of that elm and see that play to better advantage? Surprised and confused, I advanced, mumbling some unintelligible excuse. You saw a pretty bit of acting here, he went on, striking a match and lighting a cigar, the while he regarded me coolly, his eyes twinkling with their usual mockery. You know my theory, that all men and all women are purchasable for gold. Well, I wanted to try Mavis Clare. She rejected my advantageous offers, as you must have heard. And I could only make matters smooth by asking her to pray for me. That I did, this very melodramatically, I hope you will admit. A woman of that dreamy, idealistic temperament always likes to imagine that there is a man who is grateful for her prayers. You seemed very much in earnest about it, I said, vexed with myself that he had caught me spying. But of course, he responded, thrusting his arm familiarly through mine. I had an audience. 2 fastidious critics of dramatic art heard me rant my rantings. I had to do my best. 2 critics? I repeated perplexedly. Yes. You on one side, Lady Sybil on the other. Lady Sybil rose, after the custom of fashionable beauties at the opera, before the last scene in order to get home in good time for supper. He laughed wildly and discordantly, and I felt desperately uncomfortable. You must be mistaken, Lucio, I said. That I listened, I admit, and it was wrong of me to do so, but my wife would never consent. Ah, then it must have been a sylph of the woods that glided out of the shadow with silken train behind her and diamonds in her hair, he retorted gaily. Tut, Geoffrey, don't look so crestfallen. I have done with Mavis Clare, and she with me. I have not been making love to her. I have simply, just to amuse myself, tested her character, and I find it stronger than I thought. The combat is over. She will never go my way, nor I fear shall I ever go hers. Upon my word, Lucio, I said with some irritation, your disposition seems to grow more and more erratic and singular every day. Does it not? He answered, with a droll affection of interested surprise in himself. I am a curious creature. Altogether, wealth is mine, and I care not a jot for it. Power is mine, and I loathe its responsibility. In fact, I would rather be anything but what I am. Look at the lights of your home, sweet home, Geoffrey. This he said as we emerged from among the trees on the moonlit lawn, from whence could be seen the shining of electric lamps in the drawing-room. Lady Sybil is there, an enchanting and perfect woman who lives but to welcome you to her embracing arms. Fortunate man! Who would not envy you love? Who could exist without it, save me, of course? Who, in Europe at least, would forego delights of kissing, which the Japanese, by the by, consider a disgusting habit, without embraces and all those other endearments which are supposed to dignify the progress of true love? One never tires of these things. There is no satiety. I wish I could love somebody. So you can, if you like, I said, with a little uneasy laugh. I cannot. It is not in me. You heard me tell Mavis Clare as much. I have it in my power to make other people fall in love, somewhat after the dexterous fashion of practiced by matchmaking mothers. But for myself, love on this planet is too low a thing, too brief in duration. Last night, in a dream, I do have strange dreams at times, I saw one whom possibly I could love, but she was a spirit with eyes more lustrous than the morning, and a form as transparent as flame. She could sing sweetly, and I watched her soaring upwards and listened to her song. It was a wild song, and to many mortals' ears meaningless. It was something like this, and his rich baritone pealed lusciously forth in melodious tune. Into the light, into the heart of the fire, to the innocent core of the deathless flame, I ascend, I aspire. Under me rolls the whirling earth, with the noise of a myriad wheels that run, ever round and about the sun. Over me circles the splendid heaven, strewn with the stars of morn and even. And I am queen of the air serene, float with my flag like wings, unfurled alone, alone, twixt God and the world. Here he broke off with a laugh. She was a strange spirit, he said, because she could see nothing but herself twixt God and the world. She was evidently quite unaware of the numerous existing barriers put up by mankind between themselves and their Maker. I wonder what unenlightened sphere she came from. I looked at him in mingled wonder and impatience. You talk wildly, I said, and you sing wildly of things that mean nothing and are nothing. He smiled, lifted his eyes to the moon, now shining her fullest and brightest. True, he replied. These things have meaning and are valuable. Have all to do with money or appetite, Geoffrey. There is no wider outlook, evidently, but we are speaking of love, and I hold that love should be eternal as hate. Here you have the substance of my religious creed, if I have any, that there are two spiritual forces ruling the universe, love and hate, and that their incessant quarrel creates the general confusion of life, both contended one against the other, and only at Judgment Day will it be proved which is the strongest. I am on the side of hate myself, for at present hate has scored all the victories worth winning, while love has been so often martyred that there is only the poor ghost of it left on earth. At that moment, my wife's figure appeared at the drawing-room window, and Lucio threw away his half-smoked cigar. Your guardian angel beckons, he said, looking at me with an odd expression of something like pity mingled with disdain. Let us go in. Chapter 30. The very next night, but one after Lucio's strange interview with Mavis Clare, the thunderbolt destined to wreck my life and humiliate me to dust fell with appalling suddenness. No warning given. It came at a moment when I had dared to deem myself happy. All that day, the last day I was ever to know of pride or self-gratulation, I had enjoyed life to the full. It was a day, too, in which Sybil had seemed transformed to sweeter, gentler woman than I had hitherto known her, when all her attractions of beauty and manner were apparently put forth to captivate the enthrall me, as though she were yet to be wooed and won. Or did she mean to bewitch and subjugate Lucio? Of this I never thought, never dreamt. I only saw in my wife an enchantress of the most voluptuous and delicate loveliness, a woman whose very garments seemed to cling to her tenderly, as though proud of clothing so exquisite a form, a creature whose every glance was brilliant, whose every smile was ravishment, and whose voice, attuned to the softest and most caressing tones, appeared in its every utterance to assure me of a deeper and more lasting love than I had yet enjoyed. The hours flew by on golden wings, while all three, Sybil, myself, and Lucio, had attained, as I imagined, to a perfect unity of friendship and mutual understanding. We had passed that last day together in the outlying woods of Willowsmere, under a gorgeous canopy of autumn leaves, through which the sun shed mellow beams of rose and gold. We had an al fresco luncheon in the open air. Lucio had sung for us wild old ballads and love madrigals, till the very foliage had seemed to tremble with joy at the sound of such enchanting melody. And not a cloud had marred the perfect peace and pleasure of the time. Mavis Clare was not with us, and I was glad. Somehow I felt that of late she had been more or less discordant element of what whenever she had joined our party. I admired her. In a sort of fraternal, half-patronizing way, I even loved her. Nevertheless, I was conscious that her ways were not as our ways, her thoughts not as our thoughts. I placed the fault on her, of course. I concluded that it was because she had what I elected to call literary egoism, instead of by its rightful name, the spirit of honorable independence. I never considered the inflated quality of my own egoism, the poor pride of a cash and county position, which is the pettiest sort of vainglory anyone can indulge in. And after turning the matter over in my mind, I decided that Mavis was a very charming young woman, with great literary gifts, and an amazing pride which made it totally impossible for her to associate with the great people so-called, as she would never descend to the necessary level of flunkish servility which they expected and which I certainly demanded, I should almost have been inclined to regulate her to Grub Street, and not a faint sense of justice, as well as the shame, held me back from doing her that indignity even in my thoughts. However, I was too much impressed with my own vast resources of unlimited wealth to realize the fact that anyone who, like Mavis, earns independence by intellectual work and worth alone, is entitled to feel a far greater pride than those who by mere chance of birth or heritage become the possessors of millions. Then again, Mavis Clare's literary position was, though I liked her personally, always a kind of reproach to me when I thought of my own abortive efforts to win the laurels of fame. So that on the whole, I was glad she did not spend that day with us in the woods. Of course, if I had paid any attention to the trifles which make up the sum of life, I should have remembered that Lucio had told her he would meet her no more on earth. But I judged this to be a mere trifle of hasty and melodramatic speech, without any intentional meaning. So my last 24 hours of happiness passed away in hassle serenity. I felt a sense of deepening pleasure in existence, and I began to believe that the future had brighter things in store for me than I had lately ventured to expect. Sybil's new phase of gentleness and tenderness towards me, combined with her rare beauty, seemed to augur that misunderstandings between us would be sort of short in duration, and that her nature, too early rendered harsh and cynical by a society education, would soften in time to that beautiful womanliness which is, after all, women's best charm. Thus I thought in blissful and contented reverie, reclining under the branching autumnal foliage, with my fair wife beside me, and listening to the rich tones of my friend Lucio's magnificent voice, pealing forth sonorous, wild melodies, as the sunset deepened in the sky, and the twilight shadows fell. Then came the night which dropped only a few hours over the quiet landscape, but forever over me. We had dined late, and pleasantly fatigued with our day in the open air, had retired early. I had lately grown a heavy sleeper, and I suppose I must have slumbered some hours, when I was awakened suddenly, as though by an imperative touch from some unseen hand. I started up in bed. The night lamp was burning dimly, and by its glimmer I saw that Sybil was no longer by my side. My heart gave one bound against my ribs, and then almost stood still. A sense of something unexpected and calamitous chilled my blood. I pushed aside the embroidered silk hangings of the bed and peered into the room. It was empty. Then I rose hastily, put on my clothes, and went to the door. It was carefully shut, but not locked. It had been when we retired for the night. I opened it without the least noise, and looked out into the long passage. No one was there. Immediately opposite the bedroom door, there was a winding oak staircase leading down to a broad corridor in which former times had been used as a music room or picture gallery. An ancient organ, still sweet of tone, occupied one end of it with dull golden pipes towering up the carved and embossed ceiling. The other end was lit by a large oriel window, like that of a church, filled with rare old stained glass, representing in various niches the lives of the saints, the center subject being the martyrdom of Saint Stephen. Advancing with soft caution to the balustrade overlooking this gallery, I gazed down into it, and for a moment I could see nothing on the polished floor but the criss-cross patterns made by the moonlight falling through the great window. But presently, as I watched breathlessly, wondering where Sybil could have gone to at this time of night, I saw a dark, tall waver across the moonlight network of lines, and I heard the smothered sound of voices. With my pulses beating furiously, and the sensation of suffocation in my throat, full of strange thoughts and suspicions which I dared not define, I crept slowly and stealthily down the stair, till as my foot touched the last step, I saw what nearly struck me to the ground with shock of agony. and I had to draw back and bite my lips hard to repress the cry that nearly escaped them. There, before me in the full moonlight, with the colors of the red and blue robes of the painted saints in the window, glowing blood-like and azure about her, knelt my wife, arrayed in diaphanous garment of filmy white, which betrayed rather than concealed the outline of her form. Her wealth of hair falling about her in wild disorder, her hands clasped in supplication, her pale face upturned, and above towered the dark imposing figure of Lucio. I stared at the twain with dry burning eyes. What did this portend? Was she my wife false? Was he, my friend, a traitor? Patience, patience, I muttered to myself. This is a piece of acting, doubtless, such as chanced the other night with Mavis Clare. Patience, let us hear this comedy. And drawing myself close up against the wall, I leaned there, scarcely drawing breath, waiting for her voice. For his, when they spoke, I should know. Yes, I should know all. And I fastened my looks on them. And as they stood there, vaguely wondering, even in my tense anguish, and fearful light on Lucio's face, a light which could scarcely be a reflection of the moon, as he backed the window, and at the scorn of the frowning brows, the terrific humor swayed him. Why did he even, to my stupefied thought, appear more than human? Why did his very beauty seem hideous at that moment, and his aspect fiendish? Hush, hush, she spoke, my wife. I heard every word, heard all she endured, all without falling dead at her feet in extremity of my dishonor and despair. I love you, she wailed. Lucio, I love you, and my love is killing me. Be merciful, have pity on my passion. Love me for 1 hour, 1 little hour. It is not so much to ask, and afterwards, do with me what you will. Torture me, brand me an outcast in public sight. Curse me before heaven. I care nothing. I am yours, body and soul. I love you. Her accents vibrated with mad, idolatrous pleading. I listened, infuriated but dumb. Hush, hush, I told myself. This is a comedy, not yet played out. And I waited, with every nerve strained for Lucio's reply. It came, accompanied by a laugh and a low and sarcastic. You flatter me, he said. I regret I am unable to return the compliment. My heart gave a throb of relief and fierce joy. I almost could have joined in his ironical laughter. She, Sybil, dragged herself nearer to him. Lucio, Lucio, she murmured. Have you a heart? Can you reject me when I pray to you thus, when I offer you all myself, all that I am or ever hope to be? Am I repugnant to you? Many men would give their lives if I would say to them what I say to you. But they are nothing to me. You alone are my world, the breath of my existence. Oh, Lucio, can you not believe me? Will you not realize how deeply I love you? He turned towards her with sudden fierce movement that startled me, and the cloud of scorn upon his brows grew darker. I know you love me, he said, and from where I stood I saw the cold, derisive smile flash from his lips to his eyes in lightning like mockery. I have always known it. Your vampire soul leaped to mine at the first glance I ever gave you. You were a false, foul thing from the first, and you recognized your master, yes, your master. For she had uttered a faint cry as if in fear, and he, snooping, snatched her 2 hands and grasped them hard in his own. Listen to the truth of yourself for once, from one who is not afraid to speak it. You love me, and truly your body and soul are mine to claim, should I so choose. You married with a lie upon your lips. You swore fidelity to your husband before God, with infidelity already in your thoughts, and by your own act made the mystical blessing a blasphemy and a curse. Wonder not, then, that the curse has fallen. I knew it all. The kiss I gave you on your wedding day put the fire in your blood and sealed you mine. Why, you would have fled to me that very night had I demanded it, and I loved you as you love me. That is, if you chose to call the disease of vanity and desire that riots in the veins by such a name as love. But now hear me. And as he held her two wrists, he looked down upon her with such black wrath depicted in his face as seemed to create a darkness round him where he stood. I hate you. Yes, I hate you, and all such women as you. For you corrupt the world. You turn good to evil. You deepen folly into crime. With the seduction of your nude limbs and lying eyes, you make fools, cowards, and beasts of men. When you die, your bodies generate foulness. Things of the mold and slime are formed out of the flesh that was once fair for man's delight. You are no use in life. You become poison in death. I hate you all. I read your soul. It is an open book to me, and it is branded with name given to those who are publicly vile, but which should, of strict right and justice, be equally bestowed on women of your position and type, who occupy pride and place in this world standing, and who have not the excuse of poverty for selling themselves to the devil. He ceased abruptly, and with passion, making a movement as though to fling her from him. But she clung to his arm, clung with all the pertinacity of the loathly insect he had taken from the bosom of a dead Egyptian woman, and made a toy to amuse his leisure. And I, looking on and listening, honored him for his plain speaking, for his courage in telling this shameless creature that she was in the opinion of an honest man, without glozing over her outrageous conduct for the sake of civility or social observance. My friend, my more than friend, he was true, he was loyal, he had neither desire nor intent to betray or dishonor me. My heart swelled with gratitude to him, and also with a curious sense of feeble self-pity. Compassionating myself intensely, I could have sobbed aloud in nervous fury and pain, had not my desire to hear more repressed my personal excitement and emotion. I watched my wife wonderingly. What had become of her pride that she still knelt before the man who had taunted her with such words as should have been beyond all endurance? Lucio, 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 she whispered, and her whispers sounded through the long gallery like a hiss of a snake. Say what you will, say all that you will of me. You can say nothing that is not true. I am vile, I own it, but it is of much avail to be virtuous. What pleasure comes from goodness? What gratification from self-denial? There is no God to care. A few years and we all die, and are forgotten, even by those who loved us. Why should we lose such joys as we may have for the mere asking? Surely it is not difficult to love, even for an hour. Am I not fair to look upon, and in all this beauty of my face and form worthless in your sight? And you no more than man? Murder me as you may with your cruelty of cruel words. I care nothing. I love you. I love you. And in a perfect passion of self-abandonment, she sprang to her feet, tossing back her rich hair over her shoulders, and stood erect, a very banchette of wild loveliness. Look at me. You shall not, you dare not spurn such a love as mine. Dead silence followed her outburst, and I stared in fascinated awe at Lucio as he turned more fully round and confronted her. The expression of his countenance struck me then as quite unearthly. His beautiful broad brows were knitted in a darkling line of menace. His eyes literally blazed with scorn, and yet he laughed a low laugh, resonant with satire. Shall not, dare not, he echoed disdainfully. Women's words, women's rantings. The shriek of the outraged feminine animal who fails to attract as she thinks her chosen mate. Such a love as yours. What is it? Degradation to whosoever shall accept it, shame to whomever shall rely upon it. You make a boast of your beauty. Your mirror shows you a pleasing image, but your mirror lies as admirably as you do. You see within it not the reflection of yourself, for that would cause you to recoil in horror. You merely look upon your fleshly covering, a garment of tissues, shrinkable, perishable, and only fit to mingle with the dust from which it sprang. Your beauty. I see none of it. I see you. And to me, you are hideous, and will remain hideous forever. I hate you. I hate you with the bitterness of an immeasurable and unforgiving hatred. For you have done me a wrong. You have wrought an injury upon me. You have added another burden to the load of punishment I carry. She made a forward movement with outstretched arms. He repulsed her by a fierce gesture. Stand back, he said. Be afraid of me as of an unknown terror, O pitiless heaven. To think of it. But a night ago I was lifted a step nearer to my lost delight, and now this woman drags me back and down, and yet again I hear the barring of the gates of paradise. O infinite torture, O wicked souls of men and women, is there no touch of grace of thought of God left in you, and will you make my sorrows eternal? He stood, lifting his face to the light where it streamed through the oriel window, and the moonbeams coloring themselves faintly roseate as they filtered through the painted garments of St. Stephen, showed a great and terrible anguish in his eyes. I heard him with amazement and awe. I could not imagine what he meant by his strange words, and it was evident by her expression that my reckless and abandoned wife was equally mystified. Lucio, she murmured, Lucio, what is it? What have I done? I who would not wound you for the world, I who but seek your love, Lucio, to repay it in full with such fond passion and tenderness as you have never known. For this and only I married Geoffrey. I chose your friend as husband because he was your friend. Oh, prodigious woman! And because I saw the foolish egotism, his pride in himself, and his riches, his blind confidence in me and in you, I knew that I could, after time, follow the fashion of many another woman in my set and choose my lover. Oh, my lover! And I had chosen him already. I had chosen you, Lucio. Yes, though you hate me, you cannot hinder me from loving you. I shall love you till I die. He turned his gaze steadily upon her, the gloom deepening on his brows. And after you die, he said, will you love me then? There was a stern derision in his tone which appeared to vaguely terrify her. After death? She stammered. Yes, after death, he repeated somberly. There is an after, as your mother knows. A faint exclamation escaped her. She fixed her eyes upon him affrightedly. Fair lady, he went on, your mother was like yourself of a luxury. She, like you, made up her mind to follow the fashion, as you put it. As soon as her husband's blind or willing confidence was gained, she chose not one lover, but many. You know her end. In the written but miscomprehended laws of nature, a deceased body is the natural expression of the diseased mind. Her face in her last days was the reflex of her soul. You shudder. The thought of her hideousness is repellent to your self-conscious beauty. Yet the evil that was in her is also in you. It festers in your blood slowly, but surely as you have no faith in God to cure the disease, it will have its way even at the final moment when death clutches at your throat and stops your breathing. The smile upon your frozen lips then will not be the smile of a saint, believe me, but that of a sinner. Death is never deceived, though life may be, and afterwards, I ask again, will you love me, do you think, when you know who I am? I was myself startled at this manner of putting this strange question. I saw her lift her hands beseechingly towards him, and he seemed to tremble. When I know who you are, she repeated wonderingly. Do I not know? You are Lucio, Lucio Jimenez, my love, my love, my love, whose voice is my music, whose beauty I adore, whose looks are my heaven and hell, he interrupted with a low laugh. Come here. She went towards him eagerly, yet falteringly. He pointed to the ground. I saw a rare blue diamond he always wore in his right hand, flashing like a flame in the moon rays. Since you love me so well, he said, kneel down and worship me. She dropped on her knees and clasped her hands, and I strove to move to speak, but some restless force held me dumb and motionless. The light from the stained glass window fell upon her face and showed its fairness illumined by a smile of perfect rapture. With every pulse of my being, I worship you, she murmured passionately. My king, my God, the cruel things you say but deepen my love for you. You can kill, but you can never change me. For one kiss of your lips, I would die. For one embrace from you, I would give my soul. Have you a soul to give? He asked derisively. Is it not already disposed of? You should make sure of that first. Stay where you are, and let me look at you. So, a woman wearing her husband's name, holding a husband's honor, clothed in the very garments purchased with a husband's money, and newly risen from a husband's side, steals forth thus in the night, seeking to disgrace him, and pollute herself by the vulgarest unchastity. And this is all that the culture and training of the 19th century civilization can do for you? Myself, I prefer the barbaric fashion of old times, when rough savages fought for their women, and they fought for their cattle, treated them as cattle, and kept them in their place, never dreaming of endowing them with such strong virtues as truth and honor. If women were pure and true, then the lost happiness of the world might return to it. But the majority of them are like you, liars, ever pretending to be what they are not. I may do what I choose with you. You say, torture you, kill you, brand you with a name of outcast in public sight, and curse you before heaven, if I will only love you. All this is melodramatic speech, and I never cared for melodrama at any rate. I shall neither kill you, brand you, curse you, nor love you. I shall simply call your husband. I stirred from my hiding place, then stopped. She sprang to her feet in an insensate passion of anger and shame. You dare not, she panted. You dare not so disgrace me. Disgrace you, he echoed scornfully. That remark comes rather late, seeing that you have disgraced yourself. But she was now fairly roused. All the savagery and obstinacy of her nature was awakened, and she stood like some beautiful wild animal at bay, trembling from head to foot with violence of her emotions. You repulse me, you scorn me, she muttered, in horrified, fierce accents that scarcely rose above an angry whisper. You make a mockery of my heart's anguish and despair, but you shall suffer for it. I am your match, nay, your equal. You shall not spurn me a second time. You ask I will love you when I know who you are. It is your pleasure to deal in mysteries, but I have no mysteries. I am a woman who loves you with all of the passion of life, and I will murder myself and you, rather than live to know that I have prayed for you for your love in vain. Do you think I came unprepared? No. And she suddenly drew from her bosom a short steel dagger with a jeweled hilt, a curio I recognized as one of the gifts of her marriage. Love me, I say, or I will stab myself dead here at your feet and cry out to Geoffrey that you have murdered me. She raised the weapon aloft. I almost sprang forward, but I drew back again quickly as I saw Lucio seize the hand that held the dagger and draw it firmly down. Whilst wresting the weapon from her clutch, he snapped it asunder and flung the pieces on the floor. Your place was the stage, madam, he said. You should have been the chief female mime at some high-class theatre. You would have adorned the boards, drawn the mob, had as many lovers, stagey and private, as you pleased, been invited to act at Windsor, obtained a payment jewel from the Queen, and written your name in her autograph album. That should undoubtedly have been your great career. You were born for it, made for it. You would have been so brute-souled as you are now, but that would not have mattered. Mimes are exempt from chastity. In the action of breaking the dagger, and in the intense bitterness of his speech, he had thrust her back a few paces from him, and she stood breathless and white with rage, eyeing him in mingled passion and terror. For a moment she was silent. Then, advancing slowly with the feline suppleness of movement which had given her a reputation for grace exceeding that of any woman in England, she said in deliberately measured accents, "Lucio Jimenez, I have borne your insults, as I would bear my death at your hands, because I love you. You loathe me, you say. You repulse me. I love you still. You cannot cast me off. I am yours. You shall love me, or I will die. One of the two. Take time for thought. I leave you tonight. I give you all tomorrow to consider. Love me. Give me yourself. Be my lover, and I will play the comedy of social life as well as any other woman. So well that my husband shall never know. But refuse me again, as you have refused me now, and I will make away with myself. I am not acting. I am speaking calmly and with conviction. I mean what I say." "Do you?" queried Lucio coldly. "Let me congratulate you. Few women attain such coherence." "I will put an end to this life of mine," she went on, paying no sort of heed to his words. "I cannot endure existence without your love, Lucio." And a dreary pathos vibrated in her voice. "I hunger for the kisses of your lips, the clasp of your arms. Do you ever think of your own power, the cruel, terrible power of your eyes, your speech, your smile, the beauty which makes you more like an angel than a man? And have you no pity? Do you think that ever a man was born like you?" He looked at her as she said this, and a faint smile restored on his lips. "When you speak, I hear music. When you sing, it seems to me that I understand what melodies of a poet's heaven must be. Surely you know that your very looks are a snare to the warm, weak soul of a woman. Lucio." And emboldened by his silence, she stole nearer to him. "Meet me tomorrow in the lane near the cottage of Mavis Clare." He started as if he had been stung, but not a word escaped him. "I heard all you said the other night," she continued, advancing yet a step closer to his side. "I followed you, and I listened. I was well nigh mad with jealousy. I thought I feared you loved her, but I was wrong. I never do, thank God. I never do thank God for anything, but I thank God that night that I was wrong. She was not made for you. I am. Meet me outside her house, where the great white rose tree is in the bloom. Gather one of those little autumnal roses, and give it to me. I shall understand it as a signal that I may come to you tomorrow night, and not be cursed or repulsed, but loved. Oh, Lucio, promise me one little rose, the symbol of an hour's love. Then let me die. I shall have had all I ask of life." With a sudden swift movement, she flung herself upon his breast, and circling her arms about his neck, lifted her face to his. The moonbeams showed me her eyes alit with rapture, her lips trembling with passion, her bosom heaving. The blood surged up to my brain, and a red mist swam before my sight. Would Lucio yield? No, not he. He loosened her desperate hands from about his throat, and forced her back, holding her at arm's length. "Woman, false and accursed," he said, in tones that were sonorous and terrific. "You know not what you seek. All therefore beware the demands you make, lest they be too fully granted. A rose from the cottage of Mavis Clare, a rose from the garden of Eden. They are one and the same to me, not for my gathering or yours. Love and joy, for the unfaithful there is no love, for the impure there is no joy. Add no more to the measure of my hatred and vengeance. Go whilst there is yet time. Go and front the destiny you have made for yourself, for nothing can alter it. And as for me, whom you love, before whom you have knelt in idolatrous worship, and a low fierce laugh escaped from him. Why restrain your feverish desires, fair fiend? Have patience. We shall meet ere long. I could not bear the scene another moment, and springing from my hiding place, I dragged my wife away from him and flung myself between them. Let me defend you, Lucio, from the pertinacities of this wanton, I cried, with a wild burst of laughter. An hour ago I thought she was my wife. I find her nothing but a purchased chattel who seeks a change of masters. And that is where we end for the evening. That was pretty darn good, wasn't it? Yes, I wish to pollute you with the vulgarest unchastity. Anyway, my lovely, um, I love you all. Thank you for joining me tonight. I ask that if you are enjoying this, you can support my channel through Patreon, thegentlemanpsychic.com. Also, you can find me on PayPal. That's rlillard6@gmail.com. Venmo is Richard-Lale Lillard. If you so choose to, you don't have to, but it does help me to continue to do what I do. Anyway, darlings, I love you. I love you all. Thank you for joining me. And unpleasant dreams. Good night. Take care.